Greenlightnetwork presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time show on the Greenlight Network. We're here for NFL Draft Special with our man Achilles Rain, and we're going to do AFC team needs. Achilles, are you ready to get into the AFC side of things on the NFL Draft?
Yeah, I'm definitely ready. I know that the draft is really just a few days away, so I'm really excited to get this out of the way so we can start working on our mock drafts. Yes,
indeed. Mock drafts coming up next week, right before the draft. We might also have a little bit of a draft gambling show as well sometime next week if I can get those words out of my mouth. But let's start out with our team needs on the NFL draft. Let's start in the AFC North and work our way all the way to the AFC West. So AFC North, the first team I got on my list are the Cincinnati Bengals. Where are you looking for the Bengals to upgrade in this draft?
I mean, realistically speaking, the Bengals have a few holes to fill. I know that if you look at just their team needs, there's a couple things that really stand out. One, I think the wide receiver position is probably a really important piece for this draft, especially when you have a young quarterback. You're really trying to develop him and, get into that next level in his career. So it's really important to get some help, on the outside with some weapons. And I think secondary, probably an offensive tackle. We saw last season the quarterback was under heavy duress pretty much all season long until he got hurt. But I did like what I saw from their young quarterback. He showed some flashes of, having that potential to be the guy when it comes to, being the main man in Cincinnati. So I think if they could get him some help with some protection and some weapons on the outside, they'd be poised for a much better season this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think my number one thing for them would just be some protection along that line, especially with the way this team likes to pass the ball. If you're going to have a coach, and now I think we could probably debate how long they will have a coach, but the Bengals tend to hold on to their coaches. So I'm assuming this guy will stick around. And if you're going to throw 40, 50, 60 times a game, consistently, I think you need to make sure that line's shored up and certainly make sure your quarterback, who you spent a number one pick on, is protected, because he certainly was not last season. Secondary type things, I do think you need an upgrade at receiver. As much as, I've made fun of AJ Green leaving, that does leave a spot open for the wide receivers. I don't see a lot of depth there at wide receiver for the Bengals. We could probably list a whole lot of defensive candidates aside of the things. Inside linebacker, outside linebacker, edge rusher. Your interior, still pretty solid with the likes of Geno Atkins and stuff in there, but he's starting to get a little long in the tooth as well. So you might want to start to upgrade that, but not necessarily. And I don't know if I'd go secondary as the number one part of my defense I'd upgrade. I think I'd definitely look at pass rush and linebacker, but I pretty much could cover the whole ground defensively for the Cincinnati Bengals. They were quite poor pretty much at every level last season on the defensive side of things.
Yeah, they definitely had plenty of holes to fill. But at least in my opinion, I think that if they can focus on just the fundamentals as far as, taking care of your quarterback, I think that it'll make for a better season for them. But like you said, there are plenty of holes to fill. I just don't think they're as important as, getting some help on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's definitely so. So let's move on past the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's go to a very interesting team in the Cleveland Browns. I think we said on our show a couple weeks ago, we thought this was the deepest roster in the division. Now, the Ravens made a trade to get a handful of draft picks in this upcoming draft. So I don't know if we'll be saying that after the Ravens get a couple more picks. But anyway, where are you looking for the Cleveland Browns to upgrade here?
This team was a little tough for me when I was looking at their overall statistical performance of last season. I think they performed pretty well. Now, when I watching the games, I was always kind of taken aback because I felt like they were a little bit overrated just based on the performance I saw. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the quarterback just isn't playing up to the standards of that roster. Like you said, that roster seems to be pretty stacked when you just look at it on paper. So um, I'm not going to say that they need to improve the quarterback position. I think that if he improves this offseason, uh, they'll be okay. They'll probably be one of those teams that's definitely contending for a playoff spot. So um, I'm looking more towards kind of an edge rusher. Some help on the defensive line. That secondary needs a little bit of help. And if you could add, this is very wide receiver heavy draft. So if you could add some wide receiver help just to kind of put more weapons out there. I know you've already got Landry and you've got, some big time guys there, but you could always use another wide receiver, especially with the issues they had last season with injuries to their skill position. So I think you need to focus mainly on defense and probably snatch up one of those, talented wide receivers since this draft is so heavy on the wide receiver spot.
Yeah, definitely. So I had edge rusher written down, but I started to make this list a little bit before Clowney's side. Now, that being said, I don't think Clowney has proven capable of getting through a full season really ever in his career. So I do still think you probably need another edge rusher, be that as it's outside linebacker or one who gets down in a stance, but probably still need to upgrade there. I don't know if you necessarily have to do it now in the first round with the, Clowney there, but you probably still need to look to upgrade that spot. I did have wideout written down just because really there's no telling what you'll get from Odell Beckham Jr. when he gets back. He wasn't all that productive, really, if you look at his numbers while he was playing for the Browns. So, and Landry's solid, but he's definitely starting to show his age a little bit here. And Rashard Higgins, while an okay receiver, along with Donovan Peoples-Jones, and they're there, but they aren't real high level. So I think I'd look to upgrade that receiver spot as well. Defensively, I didn't see a ton more holes other than the edge rusher, maybe a little bit of an upgrade at linebacker. You can always use more and more secondary help with the way teams pass in this league. But overall, I thought the Browns roster was pretty nicely filled out. So you're pretty much picking from a position of what you want more depth and to upgrade a little bit as well. So anyway,
Definitely.
let's go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that definitely the way this team is built is definitely, a run first, play hard nosed defense type of team. So when you have a team like that, really the thing that's probably most important is the rotational guys to come in and kind of give a breather for that very heavy pass rush and, that rush first mentality. So they can get some depth there. I think they'll be fine.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on to the Ravens. We're going to talk about they traded Orlando Brown, their tackle, to the Kansas City Chiefs. A nice upgrade for the Chiefs, for the Chiefs' first round pick here. And so that gives them 2 picks in the first and I believe 2 picks in the second here. So the Ravens can upgrade a little bit. I'm assuming they upgrade that tackle spot now that they've traded one of them away. But where else are you looking outside of tackle now that they've traded him away for them to improve?
Yeah, well, that's one of the first places I was looking was the offensive line. You got to get Jackson some help there, especially since you got rid of probably your best offensive lineman. After that, I would probably say that you need to look at and this is like, again, we keep saying this, it's a very heavy wide receiver draft, so you can probably pick one up later on in the draft, but you're going to need some wide receiver help. He needs a little bit of a skill position upgrade. But I think before you even focus on that, you probably have to look at like edge rushers. They're not the Baltimore defense that we're used to seeing. They definitely took a step back. Not that they were horrible, but they weren't what we expect to see from them. And they need a little bit of help on the secondary also. So if they can, fill some of those holes and then pick up a wide receiver later on, I think that they'll be quite all right.
Yeah, I think for sure, maybe this trade here to get that extra pick allows them to take this is a pretty deep draft, 4 tackles, so they can get that upgrade at the tackle spot that they need. And then that second pick might let them take one of these elite first round receivers, which is really where I think they need to upgrade the most. I know signing Sammy Watkins, they think they solved all their wide receiver issues here, but I'm not sure Sammy Watkins quite gets it done if Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce aren't on the other side of him. So he's getting single coverage a lot of the time, because he probably won't be getting single coverage in Baltimore because there's not a lot else there. So I think making this trade, deep tackle draft, they can get their tackle, and then they can go for one of those real elite wide receivers. You mentioned it. I know it sounds weird, especially with their defense being, once again, a pretty solid unit, but it is starting to age out a little bit. You mentioned the secondary getting a little old there, so add some depth pieces there. They lost a couple edge rushers in free agency, so I definitely think they need to upgrade in those spots as well. So I'd look for probably offensive guys in the first and second rounds for the Baltimore Ravens. But I do think a lot of their sort of third, fourth round picks are going to be those defensive spots that need a little bit of shoring up as well. All right, let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, interesting roster here. Lost a handful of guys on the defensive side of the ball. Quarterback is, I don't want to say old, but
he's getting up there.
It's starting to wind down for him. Where are you seeing these Pittsburgh Steelers go here?
To me, this was a really interesting scenario after the season ended, because I wasn't sure whether Roethlisberger was staying or he was going to hang him up. Obviously, he decided to come back one more year, as far as we know. So I'm just kind of taking it year by year with him. But I still think, I know it's not super important, especially right now, but I think that eventually you're going to have to look at picking up his eventual replacement. Obviously, it's not a really important need. I think it's more of a secondary type of need here. But you said it. They lost a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball. They need to definitely, reamp that defense up. You need help on your secondary. You need some lineman help, some linebacker help. So you can pick up a couple guys on defense. They definitely need a running back. I think running back's actually one of those positions that they probably should look at. Because I know they're not going to waste a high draft pick on a running back. Nobody really is, unless you have that guy you just fall in love with. But I think they need to look at running back. They need to look at cornerbacks. They need to look at the defensive linemen, and maybe even an offensive tackle if you can, sneak away with one, just to get a little bit of protection there.
Yeah. They're in a spot where I think on the draft board where I wouldn't care if they took a running back in the first round, especially with the running backs that are available in this draft. I think there are a handful of really high-level running backs. So if I was a Pittsburgh Steelers where I'm sitting in the draft right now, I would not be scared to take a running back at all. You mentioned the defensive side of things. Probably need a couple more speed rushers since they lost a couple of those guys. But I think those can be later round picks. The Steelers have a long tradition of finding late round guys that they can turn into really solid defensive production. I think the secondary is pretty solid. I wouldn't look to upgrade too much there. I was curious just to ask you, if you were the Steelers, if you saw a quarterback you really, really like. Now, I don't know if they have a quarterback they really, really like, but there are a handful of teams up there. Would you trade up if you were the Steelers to maybe grab one of these guys and give up a couple more assets that you need to lose?
Listen, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but my only concern with that would be the fact that you've already lost so much on defense. What really helped you out last season and kept you in the hunt was the fact that your defense was pretty much stellar. They were going back and forth with Washington and the Rams as far as being the number one defense in the league. Eventually, they kind of fell off a little bit towards the end of the season, but they were still a pretty good defense. The fact that they lost so many of those key guys, I think, is probably a bigger concern to me right now than moving up, and giving up more assets for a quarterback, unless there's a guy you really, really love. But, outside of the top two quarterbacks, I don't see, a lot of reason to really give up that draft capital. So if I was the GM, I'd probably look to fill more of my holes as opposed to, you got Big Ben this season, so he'll sell tickets on his own, and maybe next year you can really focus on that guy you want.
Yeah, I agree. There'll be a whole new class next year that we all fall in love with because they all have great stats in college, and So I don't think it's necessary really to trade up until it's a complete necessary move. Trying to convince you that he was still good.
Oh, I haven't forgotten that yet. You trying to sell me on Le'Veon Bell with the New York Jets?
Probably 2015 was probably the last good Le'Veon Bell year that I'm trying to remember.
Now, you think about it. If they had a really good running back last season with that defense that they had, they probably would have gotten a lot further than they did. It says a lot about this team, and, it's just a franchise on its own. It's a franchise really rich in tradition, and they're known for their defense, and they're known for their, heavy run type offense. So if they can somehow try to get back to that, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah. All right. Let's move to the AFC East. Let's start out with the champions in the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills. Really interesting roster here. I definitely think some defensive upgrades are in order, but I'm curious if you might go running back here as well on the Buffalo side of things, or would you wait it out knowing you do have two guys who are at least solid NFL running back producers?
Well, listen, the two running backs they have are, and they're okay. I'm not even going to go as far as saying they're solid. They're okay. They can perform, pretty much on any given week, depending on the matchup. With that being said, I think that too much was put on Allen. And yes, I know that he's the reason why they got as far as they did. His production, both on the ground and through the air, was huge for that team. And they probably need that going forward to be successful. But it helps so much more when you have, that guy in that backfield that you can just hand the ball off to. And even if you're going to keep it and kind of bootleg it or whatever, you have that guy that's going to draw that linebacker attention, that's going to reduce the pass rush, that's going to open up lanes for your quarterback. So even if he decides to tuck it and run, it opens up more gaps for him. So I think that running back is probably something they should definitely look at. I probably wouldn't go crazy, but where they're picking, I wouldn't fault them for taking a running back in the first round either. Although I think they'd be better served at probably, shoring up that defense a little bit. We saw them kind of get burned a few times last season, especially late in games when they had games that were basically in the bag. And that Arizona game comes to mind, where they gave up the Hail Murray pass that they called it. So maybe you could get a little help at the cornerback position, maybe a pass rusher here and there. But you definitely need to look at the running back position. I think that's probably a huge hole that it would really improve your team if you could improve it.
Yeah, I think cornerback's a need. I think even more than cornerback, though, I'd look for somebody to get off that edge and rush that passer. I thought that times that was the reason some of those corners were getting burned was quarterbacks had too much time in that pocket. Other than Jerry Hughes, I didn't think they got enough pressure unless they brought like mega blitzes. And I if I was the Bills, I'd look edge rusher first and then cornerback. This is a much deeper cornerback draft than it is pass rusher draft. So you might be able to grab an elite edge rusher and wait and get a pretty solid corner there late. I probably would pass on the running back and maybe grab one late and hope he hits. I just, I didn't love the way Singletary looked, but he's good enough. to be in there. It's not like a total travesty. And the year before, I think we all thought he was going to have a big year. Certainly, if you looked at fantasy drafts, everybody thought he was going to have a big year. So maybe he'll bounce back this year.
Listen, we talked about it in our post-season wrap-up show. I mentioned you asked whether it's time to move on from him or not, and I thought that he could probably get one more year to really show if he's got what it takes. I still believe that he could get the job done, but if it's a situation where you can upgrade the position, I say why not?
Yeah, definitely. All right. Let's move to the Miami Dolphins. We're going down south here.
Miami Dolphins.
I think we both know what we're going to say as the number one need here. But Miami Dolphins, where are you looking?
I'm looking on the offensive side of the ball. You need to get some help. You have a young quarterback there who's now the guy there, especially since Fitzpatrick left. So you need to get him some tools. You need to get him some weapons. And I think that you'd be best suited. I know that they have a couple guys on the outside that you kind of like, but I really think they need to upgrade their wide receiver position. I think that they need that guy that they can, really rely on to kind of go over the top. The guy who can just throw it up and that he's going to come down with it one way or another. So if they can find that guy out there, I think that's probably the most important need for that team. That defense was pretty solid. The offensive line was pretty solid. They didn't have too many holes and they didn't lose too much. Now, obviously, you could always use, extra linebackers, extra edge rushers, things like that. But I think if they can get a wide receiver, especially a good one, then I think their draft will turn out to be okay.
Yeah, I'm going to say playmaker because Kyle Pitts is regarded as a tight end. But if Kyle Pitts is available at number 6, you need to take him. So offensive pass catcher needs to be had on this team. I do like Preston Williams and Devontae Parker, but also they play about 5 games a season, and it's never the same 5 games.
Yeah,
one is always hurt while the other is always healthy. So you really need to upgrade that spot. And if Pitts falls to you, that's great. But there are 3 or 4 other wide receivers here. You just got to upgrade that position and give Tua somebody to throw to. Who he was throwing to at the end of the season was really just disgraceful. Other than that, I just say overall depth. You need probably, more depth on the line. You need some more depth at the linebackers, maybe a little bit of upgrade along that offensive line, but they drafted a lot of really young offensive linemen. So you figure those guys will improve as the years go on. So other than the wide receiver, which is the glaring need that I think everybody knows they need to upgrade, I just look overall depth for Miami here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
All right, let's move to the New York Jets. And we're going to say quarterback, but outside of quarterback, where are you looking for the New York Jets here?
I think that they probably need to look a little bit at the skill positions, whether it's running. They need a quarterback, and we're pretty much guaranteed that they're going to go with the quarterback early on. So that's pretty much a given right now. So they need to upgrade the defensive side of the ball. And I'm not going to say they'll be okay, but they'll be better.
Yeah, defensive depth, corners for sure. Their secondary was atrocious last year. I didn't hate their pass rush, and a couple of their guys are coming back who set out the season. Now, I don't know, how good or bad they're going to be. So that's hard to say, but I definitely upgrade on the edge rusher spot. You mentioned running back. That they definitely need some sort of upgrade there. And I look for them maybe in second, third round to try to grab one of those guys after they grab the quarterback, which we know they're going to do with the number 2 pick overall. But so I definitely think corner would be my first choice after they get outside of drafting the quarterback number 2 for the New York Jets. Okay, interesting team next, the New England Patriots. Where are we looking at upgrades here along the draft board?
Now, I'll tell you this, okay? This is me talking to the wife who's a Patriots fan. She talks about the quarterback position. Now, I know that if you just look at it on paper, they definitely need a quarterback. You know, they're bringing back Cam, but we saw what Cam was last season. So if you look at it on paper, yeah, they need a quarterback. But my concern with that would be I wouldn't want them, if I'm a Patriots fan, I wouldn't want my team reaching for a quarterback just because you need one. Um, Obviously, Bill Belichick is a wizard when it comes to finding these gems deep in draft rounds. So I would trust the process when it comes to being a Patriot fan. Trust the process. Go for things you really need. You know, you need help at the linebacker position. You need help at the wide receiver position. And I think that there's no reason to reach for a quarterback. You've got Cam for at least another year. You can ride him. You know, you've got other guys that you've kind of held on to because you feel like there's something there. So I think that if you can get a quarterback later on, someone that you can develop, you're probably better suited to go that way. Fill the holes that are more important right now, which in my opinion are the skill positions at wide receiver and even linebacker.
Yeah, linebacker, I think they need to upgrade for sure a little bit here. The guys there are getting a little old. It's not a great linebacker in core. There's a couple good guys in there. I don't know if those elite guys are going to fall to them where they are. They might have to trade up to get them. And then you're also taking a first round linebacker, which is always a little bit dicey. Wide receiver definitely needs to be upgraded, but if we take a look at first and second round wide receiver draft picks by the Patriots over the last handful of years, it's not a pretty sight. So I don't know if somebody wants that bad juju on them or not. But linebacker, wide receiver, and they probably need to find a safety to replace Patrick Chung as well, who retired. But I'm going to ask you the same question I asked you about the Steelers. Now, this doesn't have Ben Roethlisberger. If you were the Patriots, would you trade up with one of those teams to try to grab one of those Elite Four quarterbacks? I should say elite two, because it's two guys, because the first two picks are already going to be taken.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't fault them for doing so because, like I said, if you look at just the team needs on paper, yeah, they need a quarterback. But I trust Bill Belichick. I think that he's a really smart, not just coach, but talent seeker. I think that he's the kind of guy who can find these gems in the later rounds. So if I was a Bill Belichick, I'm not reaching for a quarterback. I'm not getting – this team was not what we are used to seeing. And I know that a lot of that has to do with the fact that they had guys that sat out for COVID. They had guys that left to different teams. So there was a lot of factors that played into it. So but I still think there's no reason to reach. Would it surprise me if they did trade up and get a quarterback? It wouldn't surprise me. But I think that you'd be best suited to fill other holes first.
Yeah. Okay. So you're having Bill Belichick win games with a quarterback who can no longer throw a football forward. Very interesting strategy here. I can't wait for our win totals in July. All right, let's move from the AFC East to the AFC South. We'll go with the Colts here. Where are you looking for upgrades on the Colts side of things?
Well, obviously they had big retirement when Rivers decided to hang up the bolo, but they were able to pick up another quarterback, and if they can make it work, I think they're going to be in good shape. So right now, I'm not focused on that side on that position, but I still think that they need a little bit of help on the offensive line. If they can pick up one of those tackles early on, I think that they'll be it'll be a good pick for them because they need a little bit of protection, especially to keep that quarterback healthy because that quarterback's had a lot of injury concerns. So you want to try and keep him upright and as healthy as possible. And then I think you probably need to upgrade a little bit at the wide receiver position. The wide receivers that they have, as talented as they may be, are getting a little bit up there in age as far as the wide receiver is concerned. And then, even a little bit of help on the secondary. I think this team is pretty solid right now. I don't think that the needs are that glaring, but I do think that there's definitely room for improvement. And if they can pick up some of those guys at those positions that I just mentioned, then I think that they're probably going to be poised to, at least make another push for a division title.
Yeah, secondary help would be my first thought about the Indianapolis Colts. I thought that was one spot where the defense was a little bit weak. I agree with you on the wide receiver side of things. I did like Michael Pittman last year, and Ty signed back, but it's only a 1-year deal, and I think this is probably Ty's last year with the Colts. So I think you need to start to find his replacement, and this is a good draft to find you a wide receiver. So I wouldn't fault him for going after one here. Maybe a little offensive line depth. It started to break down a little bit. It wasn't quite as solid as it has been in years past, but I don't know whether to, crack that up to a weird COVID season or guys starting to age a little bit and getting a little bit more wear and tear on your body. Other than that, maybe some defensive depth, possibly a little bit of an upgrade at a tight end, but this isn't a great tight end draft unless you're getting Kyle Pitts. So that would be where I'd look definitely for the Colts side of things. Jaguars. We know they're going Lawrence first, but what can the Jags do to surround Trevor Lawrence with a winning type team here?
Well, let's see. They can, A, protect them. They can, B, give them some weapons. And, I think that's the most important thing. You have to keep in mind that you don't have the quarterback yet. You're drafting the quarterback. So that's a pick in itself. And then, talking about the first 3 rounds, I think that you're probably best suited to get some offensive line help and get some help at the skill position. They've got some pretty, decent guys at their entire scope, whether it's running back or wide receiver. But you can still use more weapons, especially when you have a young guy, new head coach. It's almost like the beginning of a rebuild. So I think that it'd be best for them to focus on the offensive side of the ball for the first few rounds. And then afterwards, if they can, maybe a little bit of help in that secondary safety. It's probably another need that they need to look at.
Yeah, remove quarterback, and then and you're wasting a pick there. So one pick is already gone. Quarterback is taken. Offensive line needs to be upgraded, and probably upgraded quite quickly, so you don't hurt said quarterback that you spent all last year tanking for, pretty much. So offensive line, maybe a little skill position help, but I really like their receivers, and James Robinson isn't the greatest running back, but I'm sure you could find an upgrade. But if you talked rookie running backs, he was the best one in the league last year. So, and there's got to be a little something to that. Safety and corner really needs an upgrade because essentially they traded every one of those good ones that they had over the last 2 years. So that would be where I'd look. Offensive line, really, I'd look hard at upgrading that fast. And then maybe some secondary help for sure there.
Yeah, you don't want to be in the situation that the Bengals were in last season where they couldn't protect their young quarterback and they had him back there throwing the ball 55 times a game. And we saw what happened there. So you definitely don't want that to happen with Lawrence. So you want to get him some protection.
All right. Next team up. Interesting one. Houston Texans. What if I ask you to list a position they don't need an upgrade in? And mind you, keep in mind that the quarterback situation might be a little dicey as well now.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, if I had to pick a position not to draft for the Texans, running back maybe. I mean, they could probably upgrade that position, but I mean, they just need so much help. This team has been managed very poorly over the last few seasons. They've paid out big money in places where they probably shouldn't have paid off. They traded off guys they probably shouldn't have traded, and they've given away picks that they definitely should have kept. So I think that this franchise needs a complete new rebuild. They probably need to change the way they do things, whether it's giving away picks and not, holding on to talent for a little too long when they have more value earlier on in their careers. So, yeah, the Texans need a lot of help. I think that they're probably one of those teams is going to go for whoever's on top of their board. If he's available, that's the guy you're taking because they need help at a lot of positions.
Yeah, this is somehow the anti-Rams. They managed to trade all their draft and yet have acquired zero elite-level talent. I'm not quite sure how that works out, and yet their salary cap is garbage as well. So
Yeah, it's insane.
I'm really confused how that has worked out the way it has. But anyway, pretty much any defensive player on that side of the ball, I'd look to upgrade that side first. Maybe an offensive lineman, but that might hurt a little too much considering you traded this whole draft so you could have an offensive lineman. Defense is where I'd look. Secondary, edge, linebacker. I don't know if there are other positions on the defensive side of the ball, but they need all of them. So defense is where I'd certainly look to start the upgrade. I might even pull like a Carolina Panthers did last year and just draft all defensive players and go from there.
Listen, if you're rebuilding and you've already got who you think is your quarterback, I mean, there's nothing better to do than to build up that defense because even if you have a quarterback with, very few weapons and the offense is kind of anemic, a good defense will keep you in games. So you can never go wrong with building a defense when you're rebuilding.
Yeah, definitely so. All right. Let's move to Dynamite David's world and go to the Tennessee Titans. They at least have the offensive side of things pretty much set here. They could use a little bit more wide receiver depth. So what do they need to upgrade?
Well, before we even move on to that, I just want to say congratulations to Dynamite on his little boom. I'm not sure how much of this he actually wants to be relayed, but he knows.
He already mentioned it over the air. So
okay, so then it's all good. Yeah, I just want to congratulate him on his little Dynamite, who he just welcomed into the football time world. So congratulations, buddy. And can't wait to see you back doing shows with us. Anyways, going back to the Titans, I know that on paper a lot of people are talking about them needing some secondary help. I don't think it's really the secondary that was the big issue last season. I know that they were really poor, but I think that they were really poor because they couldn't get a pass rush. I think that's what really affected them last season. They couldn't get any pressure on the quarterback. And I don't care who you have as your safety, whether it's Ramsey or, who it is. Ed Reed, I don't care who's back there. You give them enough time, and those wide receivers are going to get loose. So I think that they probably need to focus on some pass rush and then focus on the secondary. But they need help on the defensive side of the ball mostly because that offense is a powerhouse pretty much. If they can build a defense that can at least keep some offenses at bay, it'll really make them in my opinion one of the favorites to win that division again.
Yeah. Secondary and edge rushing help for sure needs to be upgraded. Probably needs to look a little bit in the tight end area of things as Jonnu Smith left. This probably isn't quite the draft to do that in, but you might take a chance on a couple of guys late. I mentioned wide receiver depth a little bit. They tried to do some of that in free agency, one with your guy from St. Louis, but I don't know if that's...
No. Not from St. Louis, from Los Angeles. I'm not going to let you get away with that one this time.
I think he was drafted when they were still in St. Louis.
No, I don't think he was. I think he was an LA draft. I'm trying to think back, but he was a huge part of the team. His best season was last season. When we had a lot of rotation players going on. So I can't remember what year he was drafted, but I think he was drafted when he was in LA.
It probably was the tweener one, right, when they moved. So
probably.
We were in between, so it still counts as a St. Louis.
Let's just call it St. Angels. How about that?
St. Angels. All right, we'll move on from the AFC South to the AFC West. Let's go to the Denver Broncos. Very interesting situation. We talked about them, that this roster looks really, really good right now. It's missing one piece, really, but they aren't really at a draft spot to really necessarily have that piece fall to them. They'd have to probably trade up. They could probably use some upgrades depth-wise on the defensive side of things. But what do you think about the Broncos here?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think that they probably need some help, just some depth help on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think that they really need to focus too much on that, though. If they can find a way to work out some sort of deal where you can move up and pick up one of those, top 4, top 5 quarterbacks, it could put your team in a really good position, because I think this team is poised to compete for this division. And I know that you look at the performance of last season and you're like, how is that even possible? But I really think this team is really well built. They're literally just a quarterback away from being a good contender. So I think if they can somehow find a way to snag up one of those quarterbacks in the draft, those top 5 guys, I think they'll be in a really good spot. With that being said, the fact that they only need depth on the defensive side of the ball, I think makes it more manageable to be able to try and work something out. And now, I wouldn't get rid of any of my, my guys that are currently on the roster. I think this team, as much as I hate doing this, is probably better poised to give some of their draft capital to possibly get that guy, because they definitely need help at the quarterback position.
Yeah, if they could make a move to get one of the 2 guys that'll be there, this would be the team I think needs to do it for sure. Other than that, some depth and maybe some line help. But really, I think this team is a quarterback away from being not a serious contender, but a contender in the AFC side of things. So be very interesting to see how things unfold with the Broncos in this draft. We'll move to the Chargers. Interesting roster here. Where are you going with the Chargers?
I think they need to focus on the defensive side of the ball. They obviously have a young stud at quarterback. They have really good weapons at the wide receiver position. Even the running backs are pretty good. I think that they've got a nice little duo in the backfield. So I think they need to focus on getting a good pass rusher, maybe get some secondary help. If you can get a good pass rusher and some secondary help, I think that after that, you can just basically just add depth to that team. I know that I like them a lot more than other people do, but I really think this team is a really solidly built. I know that their coaching staff probably needed a change, and maybe we'll see what happens this season, with the new look Chargers. But yeah, I think they need to focus on the defense side of the ball, secondary and pass rushing, and then maybe if you can find, I know it's you said it's kind of heavy for the offensive tackle position, so if you can find a tackle later on, then you pick one of those guys up too.
Yeah, secondary needs upgrades, especially with Darwin James having been out the last 2 years. Melvin Ingram still, I don't know about him. He hasn't re-signed with the Chargers. He hasn't signed with anybody else. But if he's not going to be back, which it's not looking like he is, you really need to upgrade that edge rushing side of things, so you have somebody on the opposite side of Bosa, so he doesn't get double team quite so easy. So I definitely look edge rusher, secondary. I think the offensive line needs some upgrading there. I mentioned deep tackle drafts. So if you're looking there, they don't necessarily need a tackle, but they can find linemen and move them where they need to. I also think maybe, I don't know if you'd go first or second round here, but they might need a little bit of a wide receiver boost. I mean, they have plenty of good wide receivers, but I think they don't have an elite one. Keenan Allen is probably there, but he gets older and older with each passing year, and I'm not even sure what he calls his route running anymore as running. It's a very long straighted walk as he uses his body to block out DBs, which is quite effective, but I think that probably is time to start to look to get some more skill position guys on that wide receiver group.
See, and I would normally completely agree with you with that statement, except for the fact that I really like Keenan Allen. I actually had him as one of my fantasy guys way back. It seems like way back now, but he was one of my fantasy guys, and he was productive. And every time I think that he's going to take a step back, he seems to be productive every season, regardless of who the quarterback is throwing the ball. So that's probably one of the things where I probably feel like Yeah, if you could get an extra one for depth, maybe so, but I think they're okay at the wide receiver position.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't waste first, second, probably even third round. But if the draft's deep with wide receivers, if one of those like second or third round grade guys falls in the fourth, I think I'd grab them and just try to make sure you had some protection there if Keenan drops off. I mean, they have other guys who are really skilled too. It's just you can never have too many weapons, especially with Keenan Allen, who you don't know when that run is going to end, despite his great career. All right, let's move to the Chiefs. They screwed me up because I was going to go O-line help, and they got their O-line help. They gave up a handful of draft capital here, but where are you looking for the Chiefs to upgrade now that they don't have a ton of draft picks here?
I think they probably need a little bit of help at the linebacker position. They're aging on the defense side of the ball, and they weren't that great last season. They were okay. They managed to get through games, but they weren't that great. This team is built around that offense, and they, after a linebacker, I would say they probably need to focus on maybe getting another wide receiver, especially since you lost a great, Sammy. What are you going to do without Sammy now? I don't understand. This team is completely, headed for the ruins now that they don't have Sammy. Wait, I forgot they still have another really good wide receiver and a really good tight end to pair with that really good quarterback. But like you said, you can never have too many weapons. So if you could add another wide receiver, someone to complement the speedy wide receiver on the outside and someone to really take some pressure off of your, big mismatching tight end, I think you'll probably be poised to be in another Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think defensive side of things definitely needs a bit of an upgrade, but with no first-round pick and the second-round pick at 26th, I think one of these receivers, not the big time ones that have the high level first round grades, but some of these second round ones that are mission match might fall to one of them down there at 26. I think it might be worth taking a shot on one of those guys, especially considering they will literally see the least amount of coverage they've probably ever seen in their life because no one is going to literally care about them whatsoever.
Exactly.
So I think maybe there, and then maybe in the middle to late rounds, you try to shore up a little bit of that defense, but really drafting from the late second round into the middle rounds, it's a craps table shoot. What kind of defensive player you're going to get? You might get somebody like the Rams got last year who turned out to be a really solid defender, or you might get some guy you cut in the training camp. So it's really hard to really be like, oh, it's the fourth round, we're going to shore up our linebacking core and take this guy who has like a 60 draft grade. I mean, like, we've done it. So if one of these receivers falls at round 2 late, I think that probably would be their best way to upgrade this team is throw as much offense on the field and know your defense is probably going to be bad.
Yeah, definitely. Because that last, during the Super Bowl, that was the biggest issue was, first of all, they had no defense. But even if they would have had some defense, it would have been hard for them to really stop all those weapons on the Tampa Bay side, on Tampa Bay offense. So if they can kind of match a really good defense with their really powerful offense, then I think they'll be okay.
Yeah. All right. Last team, the Oakland Raiders. Very interesting offseason. What do you got them doing in the draft?
This is a team that I was a little confused about which way to go. I thought about, possibly finding that, replacement for Carr because I don't think that he's the answer. I think he's had more than his fair share of attempts at kind of taking that team to the promised land. And I don't think he's the answer. But when I look at this team, I think that they probably need some help on the front seven. Their linebacking core needs some help. They need some help on their interior defensive line. They need a little bit of help on the offensive line also. How much of that can you attribute to the performance they put up last season? I don't know, because there was times when I really thought that this team was gritty and nasty and, in your face. And then there was times when I thought they were really soft. So I don't know what to make of this team. Just going off team needs, I guess I would say linebacker help, interior defensive lineman help, and offensive lineman help.
Yeah, defensive upgrades along the line, secondary, I think definitely need to be had. For some reason, they dumped a lot of their linemen in the offseason. I'm still kind of confused why. I didn't think their offensive line was that big of an issue last year. Apparently it was, but I'm assuming they need to upgrade that now in the draft, or their line is probably going to be worse, or I don't know. But I don't really understand this team or this roster right now, but they got runs on the outside, and Josh Jacobs, when he's not being banged up and running 35 times a game, I don't know how long his career is going to last. They seem like a solid offensive unit, so defensive help would be my first choice. But since they dumped a lot of offensive linemen, I'm assuming you probably need to upgrade that, probably more than the defense now.
I will say this. They have a really good tight end.
Yes.
So, that's something you can kind of fall back on a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So that's our NFL Draft AFC team needs. Be sure to follow us on Greenlightnetwork.org, Greenlight Network on Facebook and YouTube. Where can we find you, Achilles?
As always, you can find me on Twitter at TD Achilles. You can also find me on Facebook as Achilles Rain.
You can find me, Champ Chesterfield, on GLN Champ5 on Twitter and Instagram. That's our show. And